friends. I would like to welcome you to our first 2004 ad hoc discussion with very appealing name, the Unrecognized Friendship of Kosovo and Slovakia, which is really hot topic, as you may know or may not know. Slovakia is one out of 5 countries, European member states, who did not recognize or has not recognized Kosovo as an independent state. But as well, Slovakia is very, very, very visible in Balkans and try to stay visible there. So it's also interested in European perspective for all Western Balkans countries, including Kosovo, interestingly. So there are lots of questions and kind of controversies, and we can uncover it today with our nice guests. And I really encourage you to ask as many questions as possible, so we can get something interesting out of this. So our first guest is Lucia Klapáčová, from MESA 10, or how we say MESA. So she works there, as I understood, on a project dealing with transformation of our experience as a Slovak Republic with reforms and EU integration to the countries such as Kosovo or Serbia?
Transfer, rather.
Transfer, okay.
Yeah.
And also you were Chief of Cabinet of a Deputy Minister at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs a couple of years ago. So she's really the right person to ask these questions. And also we have our foreign guest directly from Kosovo, Ilir Deda, right? From the Kosovo Institute for Policy Research and Development. And he was also political advisor of the President of Republic of Kosovo a couple of years ago. So also the proper person to ask these questions. So let's begin this discussion. I can ask very, very direct question. What are the relations? And also by that I don't mean only diplomatic relations, but are there any cultural, economic, business relations? And also, what are the perception of these relations from the Kosovo side and maybe Slovak side, because it can be perceived differently. So, what's the start first?
Ladies first.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much also for the introduction. I'm also actually very much interested in how the Kosovars do perceive these relationships which we have and are trying to have definitely, despite of the fact that Slovakia has not recognized Kosovo. I think there's not really point to go really back to the history. However, just a few points which marked it very much. This was the Declaration of the National Council of Slovak Republic passed in 2007, which says basically that Slovakia would not recognize Kosovo unless either Serbia is doing so or unless something else happens. And this declaration has passed the parliament at a very particular time. The interesting to notice was that it was a time when the political parties in the power were the same ones which we have now. So the smer is there, but the time with another coalition partner. However, the parliamentary resolution itself was initiated by the at that time opposition parties. Influential, though, SDKU supported by KDH, not supported by Hungarian Minority Party. So interesting point to notice is that we just simply had the same people in the power then and that we have now. So those are people who actually have the power to change the things. If they want to, they can do it tomorrow. If they really want. We can then maybe later discuss why this is not happening. What, however, is happening is that the relationship is going on, definitely. One part of it is the official foreign policy of the state of Slovakia. I suppose you know that Slovakia declares that one of the priorities which this country has in the foreign affairs is the support of the EU enlargement process as such. And definitely EU enlargement process should encompass the Western Balkans, Eastern Partnership some Eastern Partnership countries, but Western Balkans definitely. So we can say that this is some things on which the Slovak politicians are supposed to work on, and they do, which of course is very tricky when it comes to the Kosovo. So now my question to you, do you think that this support of the EU enlargement, including Western Balkans, does also encompass Kosovo or not? That's my question to the audience.
They're here to learn.
Oh, tell us.
Well, definitely, of course it does. So the official line is that, okay, the recognition is one thing, but we will do what we can when it comes to the foreign affairs. So on one side to support the idea of the enlargement itself in Brussels, which is not always really these days that popular among the EU member states or among the EU officials. At the same time, to transfer our know-how or just simply help the Kosovo way we basically can. It can be with expertise, it can be with the contact, it can be with supporting the relationships. So, and now we are getting to the part which is not so known, and that is that despite of the fact that Slovakia has not recognized, we, as the country, have the liaison office in there, which means that people in the Kosovo can apply for their visa or just do all the things they need to settle with Slovakia, the official, the administrative, right there on the place. So this is not the case of every country, even those which did recognize. Until last year, actually, Slovakia was not issuing the visa, the Schengen visa to Kosovo. So the Kosovars could apply there, but they could only come to Slovakia and back, and because the passports of the Kosovo was not recognized. It changed a year ago, so now if the citizen of Kosovo applies in the Slovak embassy or the liaison office, as it is called, they get the Schengen visa and they can just travel here and to all EU countries with their own passport, which is also not the case of other countries which did not recognize. I mean, the Greece still don't, Romania don't.
Greece and Spain.
Greece and Spain, yeah. Anyway, so that's another one. Another way how we cooperate is at the level of the politics, NGOs, culture. Political one, there has been a different sort of contact. There were visits of the members of the Slovak parliament to Kosovo. There were visits of the members of Kosovo parliament to Slovakia, or Kosovo politicians. There were interviews in the media. They are already the meetings. Kosovo was also included when the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Slovakia organized the V4 meetings with the Western Balkans. Mm-hmm. So it was the time a few years ago, 4 years ago, when for the first time also the foreign minister, or Deda, actually the deputy minister when she was still, came, and she was also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and since that with all the other leaders from the regions, with all the other ministers, so this goes on.
Kosovo was represented by president, or?
No, it was not on the level of the president. It was on the level of the ministers of foreign affairs. So basically, this sort of communication is there, either bilaterally or within the framework of the Visegrad. That's another one. Non-governmental organizations also started to be active. They developed their own cooperations for different sort of projects. Another is also the universities. We have also leaflet, right? Which will also give you the infos if you want to spend some time there during the summer, or you want to go to the summer school or something like this. In the area of the culture, we had the bands from Kosovo who visited here as well. Now we're also starting to develop the business cooperation, which is almost non-really existing. It's not because of the non-recognition, how many people tend to see the things, that's not at all the truth, but it is unknown territory. People are sort of afraid of what they don't know. The most interesting is that if you actually take them and bring them there, they find out that a lot of the stereotypes and prejudices that they have are reversed, because the reality there on the ground is different. So I'll just sum it up, or I will end with the remark that basically cooperation is needed. It is existing. It is existing more than in some of the United States. And however, it will not be reflected by the political class in this country. That's another topic. However, I think the ground is put there.
Interesting. I didn't expect such cooperation.
It's a pleasure to be here, thank you. And thank you all for coming, and I'm very interested to know what would you like to know about Kosovo. This leaflet that you have, it's not prepared by me. It's prepared by a Slovak who was in Kosovo. And in the last few years, since pre-Declaration of Independence, we have had many Slovak researchers who were in Pristina and Kosovo and got to know the country. So when I meet them, they're actually the biggest supporters of undoing the prejudice that exists towards us. And I think maybe this is where we stand today. Short of recognition, there is so much space that there can be cooperation. And all of you could come maybe this summer in one of the biggest film festivals in the world, which is held in Kosovo, which you probably didn't know, DocuFest. It's one of the most acclaimed global documentary film festivals for 1 week. It's held in Prizren, and it would be nice if you come there. The theme this year will be just do it yourself. Last year it was breaking borders. And people from all over the world come to Prizren for 1 week and watch movies, party, drink, or not a lot. But
Coffee in a minute.
yes, drink a lot of coffee. We have the best coffee in Europe, actually. And it's true. Everyone who comes there witnesses it. Maybe you can come and taste our coffee. I'm here this is my first time I'm in Slovakia. And in the last few years there has been a British Council sponsored project, which is Kosovo Talks EU. Basically, Kosovo talks to 5 non-recognizing countries. And there have been, apart from MPs, there was a group of journalists, business people, other NGOs, me this time. To me, I have 11 meetings in Bratislava, and this presentation here and one tomorrow in Banská Bystrica with students. And it's just there to see what can be done more, because today Slovakia has a very pragmatic approach towards Kosovo. And although it has not recognized our independence, it doesn't stop Kosovo's EU accession, which is very important for us, because the EU accession is the tool for transformation. This is where you were 15 years ago in your own development, and that's where we are today. I think there is so much space for cooperation in culture. There is space for cooperation in exchanges. All the think tanks in Kosovo would welcome all of you to come and do an internship or a project, if possible, even through Visegrad Fund or through bilateral, or you contact others, but everyone will welcome you there. Many international students from Europe and the US come during the summer in Pristina and other places to do their internships. So it's not what you imagine, right? It's very different. And we have to explore more on this relationship, to institutionalize cooperation. Thanks to Madam here, and there is a study being done on linking businesses. How can businesses link each other and what can they do together? NGOs are looking at what can be done together. The arts world is looking what can be done together, because there is so much that can be done. And I think we were all 4 years ago very much disappointed after International Court of Justice issued its opinion saying that our Declaration of Independence is in accord, it did not violate international law, and the 5 non-recognizers kept saying that they would respect the ICJ's opinion and didn't, we were very disappointed because we understood that it was not about our independence, but it was about internalization of Kosovo in other countries' domestic politics. For example, like Spain, when you mention Kosovo, they think it's Basque country or Catalonia, but it's not. Fine. Here I can say quite openly that we wish Spain had the same position as Slovakia. If Spain had the position of Slovakia, we wouldn't have any problems in EU accession. And when countries say Western Balkans, all countries of Western Balkans have a future in EU, which is a promise given to us 11 years ago by all member states, that they should be walking their talk as well. Why? You know, because we are not just this peripheral region. We are, and technical reform is not what keeps countries going forward. It's I don't know if you remember the 90s and the wars that happened in the Western Balkans, former Yugoslavia. We are at peace because of promise to join the EU. And the EU reforms and EU path is the one that has the capacity to transform us and take all of us forward. Sometimes we have misunderstandings even with friends in Brussels when they still think it's very technical. You have to meet all of these technical criteria, but for us it's much more than that. This is not a technical reform process. It's a societal transformation. And I think that's why the EU gravity is strong for us. I understand that for many of you, having been a part of the EU, you don't see the benefits of it. But for us, the beauty is the process to accession. At post-accession, it's a different phase. But that's the transformation, as it helped you here 15 years ago to transform from a darker era of governance to a better one. And that's why I'm here, to try to establish or tell about opportunities that there are for your visits to Pristina, and come and have our macchiato and see our country. If you are studying state building, peace building, international affairs, European accession, all possible subjects, you will have them there. Several years ago, I went to New York, where I did my master's, and I talked to the Faculty of International Affairs, and I said, you should be bringing your students to Kosovo to do the summer program, which is called International Field Program, where they can see state building, security, EU, regional politics, because it's not something that you read, you live it every single day. And I can tell you that this will be the 4th year of this exchange program. It's the most successful program of international student field programs at the New School, New York. And the number of students that are coming, American students that are coming every year, is growing, and their experience is fascinating. One thing, so I'm talking about Europe, something that makes Kosovo very different from the rest of our region is that Europe is a part of our statehood. It is not somebody that oversees, but it's a part of institution building and state building. So sometimes we find ourselves at this schizophrenic situation where we don't have a clear accession path, but we have Europe inside being a part of our institution building as well, both in rule of law, which is judiciary and prosecution, and in economy as well. I would like to ask you now in return, what would you like to know? What would you like to, what are your questions? And please be frank. And the more provocative you are, the better. I think.
Well, I might not be that provocative for the beginning, but as you mentioned, there are many opportunities for cooperation between our two states. I would like to know your perception as someone who works for NGO and so on. Have you noticed any institutional barriers as we don't recognize Kosovo as a state? Is there something what really prevents you from working deeper with Slovakia in comparison with states which have recognized Kosovo before?
I understand that there is also a possibility for Kosovar students to come and study here. So I think the paperwork has been fixed. I think Slovakia has taken, or what I'm seeing is that the position of Slovakia is such to really not impede the progress of lives of people. And that's very much important. And that's why I'm saying, unlike in Spain, where our students are admitted in universities and they don't receive the visa, which impedes the lives of people, Slovakia has taken, Greece as well, of course, and Romania, they have taken a much more flexible position where they don't want to interfere in progress of a human being. And that's progressive policy, very pragmatic. And I think it's positive. Maybe 6 months from now or a year, if I wish to come and maybe do a project in one of your think tanks here, I don't think that would be a problem for me or for my colleagues. And there is definitely no problem for you to come to Pristina or any other city in Kosovo. I wouldn't. There is one of our private universities has issued an open call. The best article on Kosovo in Slovak and English, and they want students from Slovakia actually to write such an article, and then there is a prize. A small prize for the best article, for 3 best articles.
Do you know where?
Yes, I'll share the details at the end of this session. Yes.
Okay, so it seems Slovakia de facto kind of recognized, but not really officially Kosovo. And you said that we have very pragmatic approach. So, do you find it easier to persuade maybe Slovakia to some time in the future recognize Kosovo than, for example, Spain? Or
You first, then me.
you first?
Oh my God, that camera there. No, I think.
No worries.
I think. We in Kosovo. This is, how do I put this? Our society sometimes doesn't understand where we stand in Europe, because they're not able to see and travel. And this is, you can't expect massive transformation in a country that's semi-isolated, right? So what if I tell you that we are the only youth in Europe who can't have Eurotrain during the summer, or who can't go to a concert, or we are very much isolated. Unlike others in our region, we're the only ones from the Western Balkans. And if our people would see where Kosovo stands in Europe in terms of perceptions, I think changes back home would be much faster. And what Slovakia, it's my own intuitive, or what I read between the lines, they want to see the end of democratic transformation in Kosovo. So we have a government that pushes forward in terms of contracts that it takes, fulfills the obligations that it takes, right? And the more successful Kosovo is in terms of economic development and fighting against corruption, becomes takes its place for regional stability, I think the issue of recognition will be easier. And we are on the verge of big democratic transformation with the next elections that will happen this summer, June or September. So, but we have homework to do that we have to do in order to advocate our case without any possibility for the other side to raise any question. But what happens today, the Pristina-Bratislava relationship, was impossible 3 years ago. So I think there has been so much that has come, because 3 years ago, the 5 countries that did not recognize us didn't want to hear about Kosovo's EU accession. And they kept blocking us at every single step. Today, 4 of those 5 countries have become pragmatic because they understood that it's about people's lives and that it's not just purely EU accession, but it has to do with security and stability of the region, the Western Balkans. And I don't know if you know what happened in Bosnia 2 weeks ago. The country almost collapsed due to popular revolt. And people understand outside of the Western Balkans that if one country falls apart, there would be a domino effect and it doesn't stay contained. That's why for us, more than anything, EU accession is a peace project. Sustainable peace and development and democratization project, not purely institutional technical reform.
Do you see it this way, or because for me it was more we're not waiting for some kind of bureaucratic change, but some kind of political consensus that would allow to react more pragmatically than emotionally, because the non-recognition for me was more about emotions than pragmatic approach.
Discussing the presence of Europe in Kosovo, I have another question. Do you know what is the currency in Kosovo? Euro. Exactly. Go check it out with the ATM machines, which is one of the biggest surprises for people who travel there. Yes, absolutely. We were talking at the beginning about these relations which exist, which is this nicer part of the story. However, of course, there is another part of the story because of the fact that we haven't recognized, and that has reasons, which definitely must be put up as well and discussed. So, the society in this country still is very much xenophobic. There is a lot of fear inside. There is really a lot of prejudices going on. The political parties have their different approaches, and many of them have different reasons for supporting the non-recognition. And despite of these relations being developed, there is not changes even inside of the parties, although the reasons for that are changing. When we take, for example, the KDH, like Christian Democrats, for them it probably would be much more really the relationship with Serbia, the reason or the fact that there is a different religion inside of the Kosovo, which they perceive as the majority one. They are a little bit afraid of that. But not only, of course, I mean, all of that, everyone has a little bit of these fears. Even the most liberal people, those who declare themselves liberal, when they come there, first the question they pose is like, and how is it here with this Islam? And do people drink alcohol? And like this is really, and this is experiences from the hand when we had our current Liberal Party representatives in Kosovo. So I don't want to now say that only the Christian Democrats are a little bit like this, no. Then of course there is another reasoning behind, which is the fact of the state of affairs inside of the Kosovo, and then of course also the relationships with the neighbors. So some of the political parties argue that there is no problem for us de facto and even the jure after that recognize, as soon as Kosovo does in any way sort out the relationship with its neighbors. Which includes Serbia, because for the country it
Means Serbia.
or means Serbia.
Bosnia as well.
Yeah, but it's no neighbor, so. But of course, it's the region, definitely. Regional cooperation is just not functioning in the Balkans at all compared to what we have in the Visegrad countries. But coming back to that, simply the country which has the aspiration, first to be the independent country, and the second to actually become one's EU member, must have a sort of relationships and cooperation with the neighbor countries. This is what was really very strong factor helping us to become the EU members. When we had Mečija and after Mečija period, Slovakia really had a lot of troubles, but with the help of our neighbors, with Hungary and with Poland and Czech Republic, we were able to get up a bag on the way to European Union, which is really a very important factor. And we have here today also the director of the International Visegrad Fund, the only institution of the Visegrad Cooperation which is supporting projects for the region cooperation before here, but also now currently in the Balkans. But there this initiative doesn't exist. So that would be another reason for some of the politicians at home. For others, that would be just absolutely a lack of interest. They just don't care. That's not the topic. That's not the topic for the people. You will not gain any points in it. You will not sell it well. And if you read or not, for example, discussions after the articles, there is sometimes some information about what's going on in this part of the world, which really is very limited and usually not the first-hand information, with few exceptions, of course. But usually just the taken information from some agencies. If you see those comments, they are very negative. So the Albanians are the mafia guys here, and they are these Muslims and terrorists and all of that. Good news is that if you bring the people from here there, however prejudices they can have, this part is changing. They are willing to just absorb the reality in the ground. And that helps a lot. So really establishing the people-to-people contact is very helpful. But then we are also coming to another point which is also important in this debate, and that is the internal affairs inside of the political situation in Kosovo, which is something that Ilir already pointed out a little bit. Fact is that even if, for example, or any other politicians from different countries, or experts, or administrative forces, is, for example, willing to cooperate with someone there, you need to have a partner. You need to have someone who actually has also some vision, has some idea, knows what he wants to do. Politically, it can be in economy, in social system, in taxation, and everything. But at the same time, you want the politicians who tell you, like, yes, we know what we want to do with our country. And yes, we know that, okay, in order to become the EU member state, we first need to do reforms at home and the transformation at home in order to actually become really the important member inside of the club. It's not like that EU comes and saves your problems. It's the other way around. First you just somehow do with your problems what you're supposed to, and then you can become the member. Of course, the conditions on the side of the way are helping in this process, but the will must be from inside. But if you have the politicians there who just tell you that we cannot do anything because we have the international institutions here who tells us what we should do, partly that is true, but partly is that really an independent state. So the debate is coming also also to those points right now when we really speak about the experts, political class in Slovakia. And I think this is the better point because from there we really can get somewhere. It is not only about the emotions, which are irrational, and you cannot bring every Slovak citizens there, and even if you do, not everyone will have the good experience. But you can actually set some more particular and practical conditions which are measurable.
But
So this is
if I can intervene,
yeah.
it's for me what has been very shocking in the last decade has been this European overall, just the European rise of prejudice. So yes, the religious component, the fact that we are mostly Muslim, is a component, and we have to say it. You know, but that's not our problem. It's the other side's problem that doesn't understand. If I want to put it into a religious context, the Orthodox Serbia is still filled with mass graves of Albanians. Today, in 2014, do you hear that? No, because the prejudice that has grown in Europe since September 11th, since 9/11, that happened in the US and not in Europe, right? But it has grown in Europe, is actually bad for Europe. At a human value, when you look at it, it's what we all probably in European studies in class, we have all learned how Europe needs to define itself against another rather than show what it really is itself, right? I have been asked here about the religious component as well. You know, but you guys are Muslim, but so what that we are Muslim, you know? You are Catholic, and so what, right? Do we want to share the same values? Yes, we do. Well, that's what's important. And you have no right, nobody has the right to block our right, which is equal like everybody else's in this continent, to be a part of the same house, which is European Union, right? And if we are put at those standards, I'm sometimes very shocked to see how many countries advocate for Serbia, which still has mass graves with civilian bodies that were killed in 1999, and somehow is being overlooked when anybody talks about Kosovo, right? And this is something that it's our own fault, Kosovo's fault. We haven't kept the memory in the West alive, what happened, because your country allowed NATO intervention in 1999, do you know that? Against Serbia, for Kosovo, right?
No, just like really, everybody, this is absolutely true what you said. And this is opening also another topic, which is the European or EU policies. This is not a topic of the debate, definitely. But the results of exactly this sort of not existing united policy for the Balkans is also the lack of the people inside of the Balkan countries, including Kosovo, losing faith inside of this institution of which we are members, which is also which is really visible there, and it wasn't before, because we must take into consideration one fact, and that is that we as the country has a lot in common with Kosovo. We have the experiences throughout the Comenius past. We had the time, we had the experiences behind us when the religion was forbidden, and because of your faith and internal affairs, you ended up in prison and everywhere else. And generally, there was Yugoslavia was also the state in which the religion was
Banned.
banned, absolutely. So the result of that is, not only of that, but of course of this as well, is that the religion is not important factor, and Slovakia, as the Catholic country, is much more strongly religious than Kosovo is. So, but
And
this is
also the
also
fears vis-a-vis minorities. You know, when I hear what's happened, or that there have been requests for secession by in the southern part of your country, right? We have been afraid of requests for secession in northern part of our country. So when you look at where the and who, you know, in your discourse here, you have a perception that there is an aggressive Budapest, right, that wants to unite all Hungarian lands. Correct? I mean, for us in the Western Balkans, this is what somebody else has been seen like that, right? As this neighbor that wants to encompass its own people in one state. And when you start discussing rationally, you see that even politically, in terms of how you feel about your own state and what are your fears and what are your threats, we have much more in common than one thinks, because there is a strong pro-Serb sentiment in Slovakia. I know that. But if we start talking about political positions, then it's very different. Then things turn quite the opposite of what one expects. So it's a bit counterintuitive, but it is what it is. But we need to not to break this and brainwash this, but you know, prejudice is there when you don't know something. It's for me as an individual, I'm prejudiced when I don't know. My country doesn't know Slovakia. You know what, my people in Kosovo think that Slovakia blocks us at every step of the way in European accession. And they don't understand. Society doesn't understand why. It doesn't understand. And that's why it's mutual. The exchange is in mutual benefit. And we are small countries. You're a small country. We are a small country. I'm not saying that, of course, everybody can't come and go, but enough to get to know each other. I think that can be helpful because, you know, this relationship, it's not only with Slovakia, but states also need bilateral relationships. It's not only multilateralism, it's not only EU, because we together are insignificant in United Europe. But what can we learn from one another? I can tell you immediately what we in Kosovo can learn from you. We have been learning from you your 1998 change, and I think when we have our own change, we will come and ask you which mistakes we shouldn't do in our reform period, and I think that's excellent. We will ask the Croats as well their own experience in transformation, what not to do, and these are the similarities that Kosovo has, politically and economically, and in rule of law as well. Also, you can learn much from us, but it's not up to me to say what. You know, you have to come to Pristina and see what can be applicable to Slovakia. Maybe we can write a joint paper and say, you know, this is what we can learn from one another, share the experiences.
What do you think we can learn from Kosovo?
Well, actually, what Ilir is talking about is already happening. Very little, not as much as it could, but exactly one of the things that we want to do is, as mentioned, is to give our experiences, good and bad, as well, from what we went through the reform processes, through the integration processes, and it can be reforms of the tax system, economic policy, social policy, healthcare, public administration, decentralization, all those sort of issues. And on this level, we already have some exchanges. It is not as much as we could have, and of course with next stage we should have doesn't only Slovakia, but so far when we speak about us, we do it. We had representatives from the ministries of Kosovo who came to Slovakia to learn how to prepare state budget, for example, and they visited state institutions. So this happens, but less. And for this precondition is also the will on the side of the ultimate demand of Kosovo, of course. Because they must know what they want, and if we have it, we can give it. But we cannot, of course, do that instead of them, and that's not even the purpose.
And maybe just a small story. In 2008, post our Declaration of Independence, the British Development Agency was funding a huge project of functional review of institutions, of executive, of the government, and how it should be designed and changed in order to meet one, the needs of the country, and two, the accession process. And guess who the leading team of these experts were from Bratislava in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And they produced an excellent document that needs to be implemented, but it's still there.
It's your task. But do you think that there is something that we can learn from Kosovo? It's Slovakia?
Coffee. Yeah, how to make.
Yes. Oh, I mean, I have a list.
It's a lot before Bosnia as well.
No, you haven't been to Kosovo. Where is macchiato better? In Sarajevo or in Pristina?
Instead of of course, also please, but
You
yes.
can ask Andrea that. Andrea was in Kosovo for a few months last year.
For the past 3 years, actually. Yeah, I think I actually have a very clear idea of what Slovaks can learn from Kosovars. And it is the sentiment to be part of society and the will to fight for values and to bring debate about values, about what we want to be, what we want to become back into a public debate. Because I think that at some point we got somehow satisfied with what we achieved. We got into EU, NATO, we are in Schengen, we have Euro, and we are happy because everyone is actually praising our hard work, that it all paid off and we are great. We are the good guys, and we are actually, our government is declaring that we are at the center of European integration and will follow that path. That's excellent, but that's not the end of the job. And I think that you know very well where Slovakia is currently, and you know very well that it didn't really develop in the way that we wished for when we were entering all these international institutions. And I think it is important to go back to what we actually were aiming for when we were aspiring to become members of these institutions. We were not going there only because of economic development, of that idea. Of course, that's a huge element in it, and we have to be honest with ourselves, of course. But it was also about becoming a democratic, free society where you have rule of law, where you have justice, right? And we all know how, for instance, the justice is looking currently in Slovakia. So what I feel is the most important thing for especially young Slovaks in terms of their experience in Kosovo when they actually get there is to really understand that they still have a great amount of responsibility towards their own country, and we kind of forgot that, and we have to get on track if we want to see our country develop. And I think that Kosovo is extremely inspiring in this respect. because youngsters there, I mean, we can cite very recent case, right, where tens of thousands of students went out. They were in the streets, they were protesting, and they were simply protesting because they were asking for a quality education. And it's because they feel that they are part of the society and they need to work on how society looks like. So this is just one of many examples that you can directly witness in the streets of Pristina and other cities when you are actually there. And I think that we should take that as a positive example. So that's from my side.
Absolutely, I think that exactly as Andrea said, this spirit of the initiative among the youth is something which is much stronger there. Okay, there's also the larger amount of the young people, and there is also a large amount of the, I don't know large, but there are substantial young people who study really in the universities abroad, but they come back and they have different experiences, they have courage, they just they're able to organize themselves and do really nice things which even we do not have here. Some of them, so that's something we definitely we could take. But also another thing would be probably, if I can be really practical, another thing is really the entrepreneurship spirit, for example, which is something which we never had when it comes to the so much and never really. But it's developing. That's my experience. Of course, Ilir can comment, but or anyone. But they just see opportunity for this anywhere. And also the strong will to survive, which is combining to it, which I think that we have as well. You also find the Slovaks around the world in the places you would never imagined that they actually are. But they stay, they keep that they keep it for themselves, and they just become simply a part of society. They assimilate, and you just don't know that they're Slovaks. But the Armenians, seriously, okay, maybe also the Slovaks as a nation. That's the concept which should be developed, and there we could see the reasons why that is. However, in the Kosovars, I think they feel a little bit differently. Wherever they are in the world, maybe wherever, but they feel a little bit more strongly this link with the country. Maybe it's also is because of the unrecognition. Maybe in Kosovo recognized no one really cares so much, but because of the trouble that the country goes through, they feel it more strongly emotionally, and also because of the fact that some of them, many of them, are abroad or have families abroad. And if you are out of the country, you have the more feelings for what's happening at home, which is it might be also another reason. But this is visible, definitely. And the restaurants, service sector, excellent.
Yes.
It's like in the US, actually, weirdly, it's very interesting. The one thing that's striking, if you would come, I would like you to visit Pristina or Kosovo, is you'll see a crazy amount of young people, because 70% of our population is younger than 30. So everyone is young, and there is so much energy. And that's why there is so much initiative and a large number of young people who feel owners or want to have ownership in which way the society and the country are going towards. And this activism that started radiating, especially in the last 6 months. The last 6 months have been very inspiring for us who are living there as well. To see this new generation that's just pushing the borders that are being set by others. Questions? I want to hear provocative questions, please.
Ask him anything.
Please.
I have one. Okay, so when advocating recognition of Kosovo, what would be your counter-argument to someone who would say that Slovakia would lose its relevance for Serbia and for Kosovo when it would recognize Kosovo? Because it's strategically more important for both countries until they don't recognize Kosovo.
That's a very, very good question.
And a difficult one.
It's a difficult one, and I've never heard it before. I don't think Slovakia would lose its strategic importance. I think it would actually become more important. Because then it would have, instead of being this country that's viewed as the non-recognizing country, it may have a stake in helping us develop, and partners can help each other. I think there would be more partnership and recognition than there is now. That's how I view it. I think countries that have recognized us have more say how we go about forward than the ones that have not. And I don't think it would lose, even with Serbia, any importance, because there is a different kind of relationship between Belgrade and Bratislava. It's more historic, and it has to do, means from Austro-Hungarian times. So it's different. It just wouldn't lose anything. I think it would gain.
Thank you.
I would have one big provocative question.
Please.
I mean, if you were Serbian, would you advocate Kosovo now? It's kind of, if you were in, the mentality of Serbian mentality and things that are happening, and maybe also if you weren't as enlightened as a scientist, but you have the view from the top and you see how the things are working. But imagine that you are just a regular Serb, or I don't know, if you would. that was the connected to the enlightenment.
Thank you, I understand. Just last week there was a poll done in Serbia that shows that only 1.8% of Serbia's public opinion cares about Kosovo. So actually, people just don't care anymore. I think they have accepted the laws. They have accepted that Kosovo is independent, and they are waiting for the day, if that day will come, when Serbia will recognize Kosovo. So it's not a subject in Serbia anymore. I think sometimes it's more of a subject in other countries than in Serbia itself. If only 1.8% of people care, that shows you where the Serb society is.
The 1.8 person who are living next to Belgrade who don't have this.
Throughout.
No,
That's
it's
it's a poll that what are the relevant.
And like the others don't care. I mean, it's just this.
I think that Serbia has accepted the public opinion as well, because I travel to Belgrade quite often, and I have seen the change in the last few years there as well in the discourse. People have accepted Kosovo's independence. They have accepted the fact that there needs to be a relationship between Belgrade and Pristina. I don't see that they wouldn't be able to cope with Serbia's recognition of Kosovo now, but they can cope with normal relationship between two countries. And I think it happened within. This is the 6th year where they have really accepted it, and unlike 3 years ago when 40% of public opinion cared about Kosovo, today it's 1.8. So that shows you, in the Balkans, things change quickly. Nothing stays static, and this is a part of that change as well. And I can also tell you, for Kosovo, people are tired of Serbia. People want to have our country develop. For example, I don't know, do you know Adnan Januzaj? It's a football player for Manchester United. He's a Kosovar, But if we were a part of UN and all sports organizations, he would be playing for Kosovo, and you would know him as a player of Kosovo's team and not Manchester United, right? I think Vita Ora would be singing from Kosovo. But there are also other names in the arts that are people from Kosovo, in Kosovo. I mean, we have, last year in Sundance Film Festival, a Kosovar got the Best Short Movie. In the last 6 years, we have a Kosovar actress who went with 2 movies in Cannes Festival, right? We have musicians, we have art, so we have already started becoming a country that gives as well to the world. And I think this is what can change the perceptions as well, if it was known better. If these people were known better here, right, your prejudice would be lower, because you would say, look at all of these guys, is it possible that these are all Kosovars? Yes, they are, and there are so many more there.
So, just to get back to the question, I mean, yes, people in Serbia, they accepted that Kosovo is a worst case. We can see in the election where Nikšić, he was hardcore nationalist, then all of a sudden signed the deal. Everything is all right. But how are you going to persuade Serbs living in Kosovo that they want to be part of Kosovo?
They are a part of Kosovo.
Okay, but they do not accept it very easily?
You know, the Serbs in Bosnia don't accept that they're part of Bosnia.
And there's a problem.
But you know, like this comes from the dissolution of Yugoslavia, where ethnic minorities don't like to be an ethnic minority in another country. And I think the biggest test for everyone in the Western Balkans is how do the majorities become responsible? How do you become a good, responsible majority that can build a partnership with minority in your own country? It hasn't happened in Croatia, it hasn't happened in Bosnia, it hasn't happened in Serbia, it hasn't happened with us, it hasn't happened in Macedonia. Like in Montenegro is the only country where this happens, where this partnership between ethnic groups, because everybody has a stake. And I think for us in Kosovo, it's very important in the midterm to have a leadership that understands that we are the majority in the country, right? Not feeling threatened all the time, but that we are the majority and that we are responsible towards minorities. And also we need to have an autonomous Kosovo Serb leadership, because we right now there are puppets from Belgrade, and previous leaders were puppets of Pristina, and you can't build partners with puppets, right? You can build partners with people who have a stake. And this partnership, you know, minority cannot be prosperous if the majority is not. The minority cannot be happy if the majority is not, and vice versa, right? And I think this is where we need to get in Kosovo as well, where you have a responsible majority that builds a partnership with minority, and then together you have a stake where the country goes. Whether intimately you like that you're a part of that country, well, that's not a part of the political process, right? It's how do we better each other's lives together, right? And this is very important. But none of the countries around has done it, and I think if the first country to do it in the midterm is going to be Kosovo. Although, like you're all looking at me a bit shocked, this is what's going to happen.
I really hope so.
More likely than in other countries, and I will tell you why. Because the political transformation in other countries has not been. There are closed political elites that do not allow new people to come in the elite circle. In Kosovo, we have had so much transformation in the last decades that we do not have an established political elite, right? It keeps transforming and changing.
So we need to do it now before they got established. Too much.
They can't get established with such a massive amount of young people. You can't.
If I may comment, actually, I would not agree with this positive view on the situation in Serbia when it comes to Kosovo. I mean, I wish I would like to, but I can't really share that. Also, who did this poll?
It was last week in Politica and every other newspaper.
Okay, because I somehow don't trust those numbers. 1.8. Of course, like generally the idea of the Kosovo is not as much as of the agenda of the people as much as on the agenda of politicians. That's been clear for some time, but I somehow don't believe that it would be 1.8. But I'll check the research. But also speaking from the experiences which we had there, I would not be so convinced that Serbia actually is, or at least some still important political powers in Serbia would ever be willing to give up the idea of having Kosovo, or at least some part of Kosovo anytime in the future, and it might be 1,000 years. So of course we had dialogue going on, but how much practical results it actually really brought is also kind of a little bit questionable. I wish it was like that, but really, like myself, I have the really very deep and profound doubts that they would ever sort of give it up this way. And also they, yeah, of course, and they also their actions are not really exactly leading to that. So we will, of course, we'll see, and it is very much in your hands as the country, definitely.
But they at least agreed to the deal where they dismantle the double structures in northern Kosovo, which is a huge step forward.
For whom is the question?
That's true. I mean,
Because
it's gonna, you know, the Serbs in Kosovo, they had kind of very good life. I have a couple of friends there. They double salaries.
yes, these were coming from Serbia.
Yes,
These are not
and
local.
now they
The problem.
that they're gonna dismantle it. Well, whether it's actually true, we'll see.
What happened, at least from my point of view, of course, you can let you comment on that, is that basically there is a really also the dialogue sort of strengthening of the Serbs inside of the Kosovo, not only the Serbs, not only the north, but
I'm the
throughout
biggest
the country
critic
as
of the
such.
results of this.
Yeah, this is what is really happening. So they are getting actually more strength than they had before. That's one of the process. They are not weakening. And another one, which is much more important, and we had this discussion today already with one of the members of the parliament, is that as long as there will not be the ownership or the feeling of everyone who lives in Kosovo, definitely including the Serbian minority, that this is the state that cares for them, then they will not be willing to be part of it. And the big point in this is the question of the individual rights versus collective rights. Slovakia is based on the individual rights. Hungary is based on the collective rights, and we have the clashes, a lot of them, and this was very, very, despite of the fact that we have the countries who are cooperating in Visegrad, which are together inside of the European Union, and some of them are not visible from outside, but everyday work with the Hungarian politicians always brought up some problems which always need to be solved, even now, even in this situation that we are. In the situation of the Kosovo and total extreme case, the situation of this in Bosnia, simply this concept of the collective rights doesn't work. And unless this is changed, I really don't see the states to keep together. So that's also something.